Welcome back to another episode of Poor Man's Bonsai. Today we're going to be looking at some of my Portulacaria afra plants, or elephant bush as it's commonly known as. And you might recognize this one from my video a couple of years ago where I talked about bonsai succulents. And it looks quite a bit different even from then. It's grown quite a bit. But today I'm going to talk about three different ones that I have here that I've been very loosely working on for the last couple of years, and kind of explain how they got to where they are, and do some more trimming. So stay tuned. So this first plant I'm going to work on, I'm sitting here racking my brain because I cannot remember where I got it, or where I got the cutting from, I should say. Because what I do believe is that this one, along with a lot of other ones I have that I'm not even going to have in this video, are just cuttings that were growing in a big pot. And the great thing about these is that they're succulent. So you could take a cutting off a plant you already have, or so you're at a friend's house and they let you take some cuttings or whatever, and you could stick them in the ground and they'll most likely root. They're very easy to get these to root. And this guy, I eventually last year, I think some point, or maybe the end of the year before, put it in a bonsai pot, and so he's got a bunch of roots now. And so I'll trim some of those roots back and trim some of these. But he's kind of crazy looking. You can see here he's got a big cut right there that I made. So this thing did come up and split into two things, or two main branches, this one here and one over here. So I had cut that off, and I took that cutting and planted that as well into another pot, and so that's also growing. And so my goal for that was to make this thick trunk base, and instead of having two distinct branches, I wanted this one to become its main branch. So I'll probably trim back this some more today as well, kind of clean some of that up, and just try to allow that to heal over a little bit more. But it's already healing really nicely. And then this is obviously growing way out of control, so I'm going to take and cut this back and try to promote ramification, which if you're unfamiliar with that, it's basically the idea of hacking back branches and allowing more branches to come out from where you cut. And these particular bushes, these elephant bushes, are really good about that. Like, you can cut a branch off where there are two leaves, and then it'll split. Oftentimes it'll split into two more branches. That you can keep doing that and create thicker and thicker growth. I've not cut this in probably a year or more, so it was looking way out of control. So this one's going to be pretty quick. I'm probably just going to start by cutting it all the way back to probably right here. Like I was saying, you could take this and you could turn it into a cutting, and eventually this can turn into another little bush. Okay, probably do the same on this side right there. Now it looks extreme, but I want to say something too about these plants. They grow super fast, and so the nice thing is, if you ever maybe feel like you cut too much off, or you ruined your plant, I would say don't worry, because they grow very fast, and sometimes even you'll see on some of the other plants I'm going to show in this video, you'll see sometimes if you accidentally let a branch grow, or you just get lazy about it, they'll grow like crazy, and then you just trim them back, and then they'll start back budding again. So now you can see this main branch comes up here, and I don't love this big dangly doodad, so I want to cut it to there. And so you can see right away I already have more of a tree looking thing. So I'm going to take these now and cut them back right above where two leaves are, so that'll split into branches. Do the same thing here, right there, right above where two leaves are, right here and here. That'll back bud, and I'll do the same thing right here. A lot of this is eyeballing. This guy is still so early in the growing stage, because I haven't done anything with it. I've allowed the plant to put way too much nutrients in those really long branches. So now what I'm doing is, by cutting it back, it's going to start putting more nutrients into splitting off where I've cut. And then if I keep doing that, if I stay up with it throughout this year and the next couple of years, it'll really start tightening up the foliage. So now the last thing I'm going to do is just kind of maybe cut a little bit more away at this. You can see that's just coming right out. Some of these rotten chunks. And in fact, and I'm barely pulling on these, you guys. So if you look, it actually looks quite a bit healthier even without that in there. So that was actually pretty much ready to come out, and you could. I might do a closer up shot so you could see, but it's really you can see it's really healing over, and it's allowing. Eventually, the goal will be that will scar over to the point where it'll close up, and then you might still always see that it was there, but it won't be too noticeable after a while. This looks, you can imagine when I first cut this off, it's just this sheer cut, and so it looked really obvious and really bad. But even now it kind of looks cool, like an old tree knot that you would see in a cartoon. Maybe an owl or a squirrel would live in it. So sweet. So there's that guy for now, and we'll keep watering it and seeing what happens this year as it keeps growing. So let's move on to the second plant. All right, I'm also going to take a minute and just clean up some of these roots here, make it look a little nicer. So a lot of these aren't even in the dirt anymore, and so some of them might still be alive, some might be dead, but either way I'm going to clean them up, just make it look a little less gnarly and more defined. This kind of helps accentuate the big, more mature roots anyway, that are more dramatic looking and give it more of that old weathered tree look. But some of these aren't even in the ground. So what I might even do is clear away some of this dirt that's sort of built up higher up, and then we could possibly, maybe not today, but eventually get some roots that are exposed enough to where you can even see through the other side, like right there. See what I'm doing? See how on the other side it's also just open? So as this develops some more, that might be a fun thing to give this specific plant. There's roots that are outside, exposed. This one is alive but wasn't in the ground, so you can see how much cleaner that looks already. So I'm gonna go to the other side, see what there is. More little guys. It's amazing when you plant these things, these elephant bushes, you plant the branches, how quickly they develop roots. It's so awesome. Such a great way for when you're feeling impatient but you want to develop a tree quickly. Try growing one of these. They will root very quickly and be a lot of fun in a short period of time. And even within a shallower bonsai pot, I've found that these grow pretty fast. But of course, like all other plants, they'll grow even faster if you're planting them in a pot or in the ground first. A bigger pot, I should say. But all right, so very quickly that looks so much cooler, so much more ancient and weathered. So yeah, just spend a couple minutes sometimes cleaning up roots, and oftentimes you'll find that half of them are dead anyway, or they're not even in the ground, and so it's win-win. It's not helping the tree, maybe not hurting the tree, but it's also not helping the tree to have them there, and then once you remove them, you got a much nicer looking plant. So root trimming. Okay, the second one here, once again, I was trying to rack my brain on where this one was from, but I think I've got it down to one of two origins. It's either a cutting that I made when I cut off one of the main branches of that first elephant bush I showed you in my video a couple years ago, which I'll show a few clips of right now so you can see it. It's either that one, or it's where I cut off from the main branch of the bush I just now trimmed, the one in the previous clip. So it's one of those two. But either way, this is a great example of how sometimes you could have a bush already formed, you have a little bonsai already being trimmed, and if you want to cut off a big branch, it's perfect because you could take it, you cut it off, take it, stick it in the ground, and now you've created two really great workable plants. So I know that it's one of those two, and so that's what's cool is I now, over time you can get more than one plant, more than one good looking plant from the same original plant. So what I'm going to do with this guy is pretty simple, straightforward. He's just got a lot of really tall ones, and I've trimmed this one off and on throughout the last year or two, so you can see it's got some pretty cool branch structure already in there, going on in there, and I'll do some close-ups after I trim it. But yeah, I'm just going to trim back some of the ones that I've let grow and then continue to allow that ramification to happen. So again, I'm going to find where a couple leaves are there and cut there so that it splits off from there and creates more branches and tightens up the foliage. So this process is pretty fast, and I haven't worked on these plants in a while. I'm pretty sure well over a year, but these are very forgiving plants, and I live in California, as I've said in some previous videos, and these tolerate the heat incredibly well, like a lot of succulents do. So just gonna do a very quick kind of broad trimming, and I don't think I'm even gonna do some big structural stuff on this one today. I'm just gonna try to kind of get it back to a more manageable kind of branch structure. Cut this off. I don't like this guy down here. So you can see already it's looking way better. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go inside the trunk and remove some of these unnecessary little ones, like little suckers or little ones that are going to drain or sap some of the sap and water that I would rather have the tree use to grow some of the branches up here. So there's one way in here down by the trunk that I'll cut off. Okay, there's some at the base here I'm going to cut off. And once again, all of these cuttings I could stick in the ground, and they will most likely root, and I could turn into a lot of other different plants. So there's never-ending options when it comes to the elephant bush. So you can see in just a few short minutes, this is looking a lot better, a lot tighter. And here's another shot from another side, looking a lot tighter, looking a lot better. And yeah, over the next couple months, it'll really start to tighten up some more, split off. All those areas I cut will split off into another couple branches and just keep getting tighter. And that's the idea. This one, I just want to kind of go for probably an informal upright, just get a nice crown going. So there's that second one. And let's move on to the original one. All right, so we're on the final one here. This is sort of my original elephant bush, kind of my original one that I started working on to do bonsai. And this was the one, if you remember in the previous video, I was at a garage sale. It was an everything must go kind of garage sale, and I saw a big one of these growing in their backyard, and I said, can that bush go? I said everything must go, and she's like, well, I'll let you take some cuttings off of it. So I ripped some cuttings off, stuck them in the ground, and I really liked this one. So I can actually remove this rock. This rock was put in there to help support the plant, but the root system has gotten really strong. And so now if you remember in the previous video, and I'll show some clips, this had a very big branch that came off of here too. So this plant had kind of two main systems going off. And after a lot of thought and deliberation, I figured I kind of wanted to have the main trunk come off and then sort of branch out like this. And the idea would be to create a pad up here, and then maybe a second one right here where that big one came off. And somebody else might have done it differently, and I totally get that. And that's the cool thing about bonsai. You could shape a plant however you kind of want to. So first things first, I definitely want to start by trimming off all the things I know I don't want. So this little guy at the trunk, he's got to go. He's kind of sapping that energy that I'd rather use for other stuff. These dangler duties is that a thing? Dangler? No, it's not. All right. So these guys, I don't dislike them, but they're definitely way too long. So I'm going to start by trimming them right here because I like this little branch. I might be able to do something with it. And I'll do the same thing here. Because remember I was saying I want to have kind of a main pad here and a smaller one here, so it kind of has this kind of step right here from here to here. and the trunk kind of coming up in between, or kind of coming up in the middle and branching off. So kind of got those two there. I'm going to do away with some of these ones on the trunk right here going up to the second pad. So let's start right here. This guy, probably don't need him or her or it. And I think I'll keep, you know what, I actually am going to cut this one off because it's growing right there in sort of the crotch, or whatever that would be called. I've heard it called that in a tree, the crotch of a tree. So there, okay. This one, I'll do one trim here, so that splits off there. And so now, let's get this guy down here. Try to hide from me. So it's already looking way cleaner. So anyway, where were we? All right. So yesterday, before my camera died, before I had to run off to an event, I had trimmed off a lot of these branches that were hanging down and not going to be of much use. So I've got a few more of those here. This one, I'm going to go ahead and cut this guy off. And I don't know, I don't want to cut it way down here at the first set of 2 leaves. In fact, this one's about to fall off. So I'm going to cut it here where this one is, and hopefully it'll split off into a branch. And then all these other guys, these are all much newer shoots, you could tell, because the branch will be brown, and then all of a sudden it'll have some very light green. So those are all from this year, and I can see tiny little leaves at the end of each one of them, but I'm gonna trim them back even further just to try to tighten that foliage even more. So hopefully these will all split off here. And oftentimes when you cut these things, they might look a little bare, but they really grow fast in my experience, and most people's experience. They grow very fast, and pretty soon it will start filling all back in again, and then you'll have a nice looking plant. And especially if you've let it get pretty out of control, it'll look better anyway, actually, because then it won't look like a bedhead. It will look more like just a plant that's been trimmed. So, all right, kind of cleaning all these up. I'll do this one here. This guy right here, I probably don't want to keep him. So I'm going to trim it back to here so that this could branch off. And sometimes I get a little nervous cutting too much off, so I like to leave maybe more than I should sometimes, just so that it gives me time later to go back and decide, maybe I do want to cut the rest of that branch off, or I'll leave it and let it develop. So right here, I'm gonna cut this little guy there, so that branches off. So now we kind of have more to work with. We have the main trunk here, and you can see everything a lot better now that that stuff is cleared away. So we have the main trunk here, and this thing has gotten really strong, but it eventually I want to clean this up too, maybe get more roots to come down to grow out this way, because it kind of has this wow, okay, we're good. It still has this area where you could see where it was originally cut and where I buried it, but eventually hopefully that will scar over, and which it's scarred over quite a bit. So now as you're coming up the trunk, we have this first sort of area here, this pad, that now that we've trimmed it back, hopefully this will start to develop more. I am undecided about this little side branch, but because it's kind of starting to get mature and get some bark on it, I'm reluctant to cut it, but I might need to later, I don't know. But then it branches off and over to here, and now you've got a pretty good start. This pad here is getting pretty nicely developed for how little I've trimmed it, and then throughout the year we'll see how it goes and see what it turns into. and give you some more updates as we go.